Aloha. I'm coming to you from Hawaii, where Hurricane Lane is about to make landfall. I'm in Waikiki, and from the sound of the wind outside, it sounds like it's about to come right this way, but I guess we'll find out in the next 24 hours. Right now, I'm going to be reading chapter 1 from the book The Price of Paradise, which is a collection of editorials about Hawaii. And this chapter is called Aloha Spirit. Are We Losing Our Aloha Spirit? It's written by Peter S. Adler, Executive Director of Hawaii's Bar Foundation, and Nora Lynn Pinao, an attorney at law. And once again, this is from Typeface. I mean, the book was actually produced all the way back in like 1989, I believe. So, are we losing our aloha spirit? There's a certain are we losing our aloha spirit? There's a certain abiding spirit of community that we tend to associate with insular places. It has to do with the gift of giving, with reciprocity, and with interdependence. With little gestures and conventions speak to this. Each community's habits of the heart are unique. In many small towns, some folks seem to know the names and genealogies of the families that live there and all the other ties that bind people together into that place. They will share their stories with you, and if you ask them nicely, often as not, will tell you all about their ineffable something that happens when people in their communities interact. In other locales, places where people farm and ranch, for example, it is still customary for people to gather to raise a barn or rebuild a house that is burned. Everyone comes from far away. Everyone pitches in, even people who don't like each other very much. Even a few hardcore city neighborhoods, the same attitude surfaces when neighbors bring each other welcoming gifts or stop to inquire about each other's health in barber shops and supermarkets. Whenever it occurs, it seems to have something to do with intimacy, caring, and the imparting of friendship to others. Aloha Spirit. In Hawaii, we call all these things Aloha Spirit, and it is part of what makes us special. It's part of who we are and why Hawaii is different from Los Angeles, Wichita, Lexington, Philadelphia, and every other place. Here, the word aloha is to use to convey love, to express compassion, to show mercy or sympathy, to describe charity and kindness, and to say hello, goodbye, farewell, and alas. Despite its many uses, or maybe because of them, there is little agreement about what aloha means. George Kanahale, scholar, businessman, and civic leader, says, "It is hard to think of another word that over so many decades has aroused more public attention, even controversy among Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians than aloha. What we can say, though, is that all of its meanings, from compassion to charity to simple greetings of kindred human beings, are essential to a caring and humane society." Tourist in Malihini. Are we losing our aloha spirit? The question is asked repeatedly, but the answer seems to depend on your perspective and who you define as we. If you are a tourist or a Malihini, a comparative newcomer, Hawaii probably looks considerably better than the place you've come from. The climate is temperate, the landscape is magnificent, beauty surrounds you on a daily basis, and Hawaii's thriving local culture offers endless diversity in food, art, dance, literature, music, and perspective. Along with these things are simple, everyday acts of friendliness that somehow didn't happen in the place you just left, or that happen with much less frequency. The touch of a smile from a stranger, a flower lei given, a helping hand, a kind word offered when none was needed or foreseen. People from elsewhere, the occasional visitor, the repeat tourist, the recent transplant, notice these things right away. Aloha Spirit, says King Intermediate School 7th grader, I've taught there, King Intermediate School 7th grader Joel H.K. Nakalili Jr., winner of an essay contest sponsored by the Thomas Cook Currency Services, is what people come to Hawaii for. It's caring for people without expecting something in return. Perhaps because this caring is rare in the places they come from, or because it takes a more hospitable and amiable form here, Malihini accumulate these experiences. They treasure them, remember them, and come back or stay because of them. Depending on your tolerance for generalization, however, there are at least two other groups of people who might disagree strongly. Kama'aina. If you are a certain kind of longtime resident of Hawaii, but not originally from here, some of this aloha spirit may look frayed and worn around the edges. Some might list it as an endangered species. A few say it's completely dead. What many Kama'aina see these days is the crowding, congestion, and upraised middle finger protestations that seem to come with urbanization. Looking around, you'd note the loss of little mom and pop stores in neighborhoods, the influx of chains with many French names at Ala Moana Shopping Center, the advent of warehouse discounters, crowds of tourists on formerly remote beaches, traffic jams, and a general decline in civility compared to life here 10, 20, or 30 years ago. Nostalgia plays a part, no doubt, and interestingly, many Kama'aina date the decline in aloha from about the time them themselves arrived. Perhaps there is a cause and effect relationship. Nonetheless, there are other indicators that also may tell a part of the story. Remember when front doors didn't have locks? Today, Hawaii suffers from the break-in blues. 10.3 million in cash and goods stolen during 5,718 burglaries in 1992. Or take traffic. There was a time, not so very long ago in fact, when people still waved at each other from their cars. Nobody honked, nobody cut in. Auto theft was completely unknown, or even a little thing like fruit trees. Many Kama'aina can still remember bags of mangoes left on front porches. Today it's more likely your fruit tree will be stripped clean if nobody's looking. I've seen people do that. Does this mean that aloha spirit has really deteriorated significantly? I saw immigrants stripping a mango tree in a park once. Does this mean that aloha spirit has recently deteriorated significantly? Andrew Lind, a renowned sociologist from the University of Hawaii, thought so back in 1972. He believed that benefits, consideration for others, and hospitality inherently decline when communities lose their intimacy. That's been proven fact. Loss of familiarity, in turn, is in great measure a function of population increase in technology. It's harder to maintain that unique feeling of interconnectedness when the medium of exchange is a computer, a modem, a conference call, or a fax machine instead of a face-to-face smile. This was written ahead of its time. The reality today is that people on Oahu, where the majority of Hawaii's population reside, like 80-90% of the state lives on the island of Oahu. That's where Honolulu is. That's where I'm at right now, where the hurricane's about to hit. The reality today is that people on Oahu, where the majority of Hawaii populations reside, no longer can know and interact with everyone else as if Honolulu were a small community. Increasingly, our day-to-day associations takes place with strangers, Hawaiians. There is a third view that comes from people indigenous to this place, most of whom are resurgent with cultural pride, many of them politically astute and assertive. Some call themselves Kanaka Maoli, true people. The aloha spirit, say some of these folks, isn't an elusive concept and it isn't dead. It's just gone underground for a while. Why? Because it's been exploited. Aloha spirit is a special blessing, intimately tied to Hawaiian culture. Because of this, it is vulnerable. It is easily captured by others and transformed by image makers and marketers into something designed to sell vacations to people from Japan, Germany, and Canada. Like the Aloha shirt, which was invented, patented, and then turned into an industry that primarily benefited people from elsewhere, there is a risk that phrase, Aloha spirit, could become a cynical commercial contrivance. For this reason, many Hawaiians want to reclaim the phrase from non-Hawaiians entirely. Aloha spirit, says Mahalini Kama'u'u, the executive director of the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation, is based on an unconditional giving and sharing. Ironically, the very people who have least to give materially, Hawaiians, are now being called on to share their aloha spirit in the greatest proportions. We see that the phrase has been expropriated by the tourism industry and turned into a call to self-interest. We should be nice because it's good for business. We reject the view. In fact, for Hawaiians, retaining the phrase aloha spirit as a unique cultural property may prove critical to balancing the many diverse views Hawaiians have regarding sovereignty. Shared sentiments. Many non-Hawaiians, including Kama'aina and Malahini, share those sentiments. Holly Henderson, a friend who cares deeply about such issues, puts it this way: the dilemma of aloha is that it is possible to take it for granted, accept it as your due, love it, revel in it, lucrate in it, take from it, and never reciprocate, never give anything back, and maybe never even know if you don't, you destroy the balance that enables it to uplift the community. Said differently, aloha spirit is not an abstract intellectual idea. It is a life form which must be nurtured and practiced if it is to survive. Given the pace of demographic, economic, and political change in Hawaii, this may become progressively more difficult. It is easier to reduce the notion of aloha spirit to a bundle of interpersonal codes than it is to infuse the spirit, half of the equation, into everyday affairs. But for some people, aloha spirit ultimately means just that. It is the divine breath that gives us all a sense of humility, balance, and grace. An individual thing. Perhaps it all comes down to individuals and their sometimes complicated relationships with each other and with the land that grounds and surrounds them. There are Hawaiians who don't have much aloha spirit for other people or for Hawaii itself. Conversely, there are some non-Hawaiians who seem to have been born with aloha spirit. They give to others and in a place with no thought of receiving anything back. There are non-Hawaiians who have lived here for generations and have lost spirit or never had it in the first place, and people just arriving on United Air Flights 107 from Los Angeles who have more than their share of aloha but have never heard the word spoken. Love, affection, compassion, mercy, pity, and kindness. The things Mary Pokui and Samuel Elbert in their Hawaiian dictionary tell us make up aloha, transcend and cut across culture. No culture or ethnic group owns these things exclusively. If they are in decline, let's not forget that they seem to be in decline everywhere we skate to the close of this difficult, extraordinary century. This was written at the end of the 20th century, In Hawaii, however, these essential qualities of life, community caring, community giving, and community feeling, have a better than ever chance of enduring because they spring so brightly from the land and its first people. So long as these two things persist, so too will the aloha spirit. That's really great, and that's a really great point too. Whatever happens in the rest of the world, Hawaii is so far away from everywhere else that they do kind of do their own thing here. And one thing about Hawaii, I grew up in Texas, right? I didn't grow up with a picture of Diamond Head over my bed being like, Hawaii one day, you know? I just graduated from the University of Texas and started traveling, and I just kept on running into people from Hawaii, and they were like, Greg, you really like Hawaii, you should really go to Hawaii. And then when I got to the Portland and Seattle area, I met a very thriving Hawaii community. They had a Hawaii radio station, a couple different Hawaii stores, and I just kept on meeting people from Hawaii. And then when I finally decided to come out here, I decided to work on a farm in Hawaii because I'd been learning agriculture, doing internships on farms after I graduated college. So there was a farm opportunity in Hawaii, and before I left, a Hawaiian told me, Greg, you're really going to love Hawaii, but don't let anyone call you a haole, because haole means that you don't have breath, and you have breath, Gregory. You definitely have breath, and you're going to love Hawaii, and it's going to be your home. And I always remembered what he told me that, and he was totally right too. And I do love Hawaii, and it is always going to be my home. So with that being said, if you enjoyed my reading, click the thumbs up button. I'm doing this in the middle of a hurricane, so that's even more reason to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And go ahead and write your comments about what you think about Hawaii. I appreciate everything that's been going on, and thank you for listening.